The restaurant was too quiet. That was the first thing Daniel noticed when Sophia stood up, her hands trembling as they moved to the hem of her silk blouse. Around them, conversations died mid-sentence. Even the waiter froze near the kitchen door. Daniel's heart hammered. They had been dancing around words neither of them knew how to say, and then she had whispered it. "No one wants to date me, not really, and I need you to understand why." Now she was lifting her shirt. The scar started just below her collarbone and carved down her sternum, angry and thick. A roadmap of survival drawn in raised flesh. It was the kind of wound that spoke of opened chests and stopped hearts, of surgeons fighting time. Daniel couldn't breathe, not because he was repulsed, but because he recognized it. He had kissed a scar exactly like that once, every night, whispering promises into his wife's skin that neither of them could keep. He had traced it with his fingertips in the dark, pressed his ear against it to hear the mechanical rhythm of the heart that had replaced her dying one, and then he had buried her anyway. Sophia's voice cracked. "Say something," but Daniel couldn't, because sitting across from him wasn't just a woman showing her brokenness. It was a ghost. It was a second chance. It was every nightmare and hope crashing together. His hand reached across the table, stopping inches from her skin. "You look just like her," he whispered, and Sophia's face shattered. "Before we dive into this story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. We love seeing how far these stories reach, connecting hearts across borders and time zones. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, stories about second chances and the courage to love again, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's go back to where this impossible connection began. 3 months earlier, Daniel Carter stood in the gilded ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel, surrounded by people who belonged there, and tried not to look like he was drowning. The annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the kind of event where millionaires wrote checks without blinking, where champagne flowed like water, and where a single-father architect in a rented suit felt like an imposter. But Emma's teacher had told him about it, had mentioned that the hospital was funding experimental pediatric cardiology research, and Daniel had clung to that information like a lifeline. His daughter needed a miracle. This room was full of people who could afford to buy them. He had scraped together $500 for the entry ticket, money that should have gone toward rent. The invitation sat in his jacket pocket, printed on cream cardstock that probably cost more than his grocery budget. He had told himself it was an investment. Network with the right people. Make the right impression. Find someone, anyone, who might help fund Emma's surgery. But now, standing at the registration table, watching the woman in pearls scan his name on her tablet, Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter," she said, her smile professionally polite. "But your payment didn't go through. The card was declined." The words hit him like a fist to the stomach. "That's not possible. I verified the funds yesterday." She tapped the screen again, her expression shifting from polite to pitying. "The system shows insufficient funds." Perhaps there was an unexpected charge. There had been. Emma's medication refill that morning. $240 he hadn't budgeted for because the insurance company had changed their formulary without warning. Daniel's throat tightened. Behind him a line was forming. Men in tuxedos. Women dripping diamonds. All of them waiting, watching him fail in real time. "Can I pay the difference now?" he asked quietly. "I have cash." The woman hesitated. "The ticket price is $500, sir. Do you have—" "I have $320. The words tasted like ash. Her pity deepened. "I'm afraid that's not enough." Someone behind him sighed, impatient. Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck, shame burning through his chest. He should leave, should turn around and walk out with whatever dignity he had left. But then he thought of Emma, small and pale in her hospital bed last week, asking him if the doctors were going to fix her heart like they fixed Mommy's. And he thought of the answer he couldn't give her, that they had fixed Mommy's heart, but it hadn't been enough. That sometimes medicine ran out of miracles. "Please," he heard himself say, "this research could save my daughter's life. Isn't there a payment plan or—" "Sir," the woman's voice was firmer now, embarrassed for him. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." The man behind him, silver-haired and impatient, spoke up. "For God's sake, either pay or leave. Some of us actually belong here." The words landed like a slap. Daniel felt his hands clench at his sides, felt the hot sting of humiliation rising behind his eyes. He was 35 years old, a grown man, and he was about to cry in front of strangers because he couldn't afford to beg for his daughter's life properly. He stepped aside. The line moved forward, swallowing him into irrelevance. He stood there, frozen, watching people hand over credit cards without thought, watching them laugh and chat as if $500 was nothing, as if hope wasn't a luxury item. He was about to turn toward the exit when a voice stopped him. "Excuse me?" Daniel looked up. She was striking in the way that money made people striking, polished and perfect, wearing a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than his car, dark hair pulled back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. But it was her eyes that caught him. Sharp and assessing, yes, but not cold. There was something else there, something almost familiar. "You dropped this," she said, holding out his invitation. He hadn't dropped it. It was still in his pocket. But when he looked down at the card in her hand, he saw it was identical to his, except this one had a name written across the top in elegant script. Sophia Morgan. She pressed it into his hand before he could protest. "The registration desk makes mistakes sometimes. I'm sure they'll honor this one." Daniel stared at her. "I can't, you can." Her voice was quiet but firm. "And you will, because whatever brought you here tonight matters more than your pride." She turned and walked away before he could argue, disappearing into the crowd like she had never been there at all. The woman at the registration desk looked at the new invitation, then at Daniel, confusion flickering across her face. But the name Sophia Morgan clearly meant something, because she nodded and handed him a credential badge without another word. Daniel stood in the ballroom for 2 hours, nursing a single glass of champagne, trying to network and failing miserably. But he stayed because someone had given him a chance, and he owed it to Emma to try. He didn't see the woman in blue again that night. 1 week later, Daniel was replacing a cracked tile in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Carter?" The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. "My name is Grace Chen. I'm calling on behalf of Sophia Morgan. Ms. Morgan would like to meet with you to discuss a potential business arrangement." Daniel set down his trowel. "I think you have the wrong number. You attended the Children's Hospital Gala last Saturday. Ms. Morgan would very much like to speak with you. Are you available tomorrow at 2? He thought of the woman in blue, the impossible kindness. What kind of business arrangement? "Ms. Morgan will explain everything in person. I can send a car to pick you up." Daniel looked around Mrs. Patterson's outdated kitchen, at the tile that would take him another 3 hours to finish, at the invoice sitting on the counter that would barely cover this month's electricity. He thought of Emma, who had another cardiology appointment on Friday that he couldn't afford to miss. "I'll be there," he said. The Morgan building occupied an entire block in downtown, glass and steel rising 40 stories into the sky. Daniel felt underdressed in his clean jeans and button-down shirt, felt the weight of every eye that tracked him through the marble lobby to the executive elevator. The assistant, Grace, met him on the 38th floor. "Ms. Morgan is expecting you." She led him through a maze of sleek corridors to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city, and there, standing with her back to him, silhouetted against the skyline, was the woman from the gala. "Mr. Carter," she said without turning around. "Thank you for coming. You paid for my ticket." "I did." "Why?" She finally turned to face him. In the daylight, without the soft glow of ballroom chandeliers, he could see the details he had missed. The faint shadows under her eyes, the careful way she held herself, like someone who had learned to move through the world without drawing attention to hidden pain. "Because I recognized something in you," Sophia said simply, desperation wrapped in dignity. "It's rare." Daniel felt his jaw tighten. "I'm not a charity case." "No, you're not." She moved to her desk, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the polished surface toward him. "Which is why I'm offering you a contract, not a handout." He didn't touch the folder. "What kind of contract?" Sophia sat down, folding her hands in front of her. "I need a husband, Mr. Carter. Temporarily. 6 months to be precise. In exchange, I'm prepared to offer you $500,000. The number hung in the air between them, impossible and obscene. Daniel laughed, a short, bitter sound. "This is a joke." "It's not." You want to pay me $500,000 to pretend to be your husband? Yes. Why? Sophia's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation, vulnerability, the same contradiction he had seen at the gala. Because my parents control the company I built. And according to the terms of my grandfather's will, I can't take full control until I'm married. They've been trying to arrange a suitable match for 2 years. I'm tired of waiting for their approval. So marry someone real. I don't want someone real. Her voice was flat. Real comes with expectations, emotions, complications. I want a business arrangement. 6 months of public appearances, family dinners, and corporate events. You play the role of devoted husband. I pay you enough money to solve whatever problem brought you to that gala. And at the end, we part ways cleanly. Daniel stared at her. You're serious. Completely. You don't even know me. I know enough. You're not a criminal. You're not an opportunist. You're a father trying to save his daughter. She paused. The investigator I hired was very thorough. The words should have made him angry. Instead, he felt something close to relief. She knew. She knew about Emma, about the medical debt, about the house he was about to lose. She knew he was desperate, and she was still sitting here, offering him a way out. Why me? He asked quietly. Because you won't fall in love with me. Sophia's smile was sad and certain. You're still in love with your wife. I saw it at the gala. The way you looked at that invitation like it was a betrayal to even be there. You're not looking for romance, Mr. Carter. You're looking for survival, so am I. Daniel opened the folder. The contract was 30 pages long, dense with legal language and stipulations. But the number at the bottom was clear. $500,000. Paid in full upon completion of 6 months. Emma's surgery cost $350,000. The rest would cover their debt, buy them time, give them a future. What about my daughter? He asked. She'll live with us. I have a house with more than enough space. She'll want for nothing. And after 6 months, we file for a quiet divorce. Irreconcilable differences. You walk away with your money and your life. I walk away with my company. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the answer to prayers he had stopped believing would be heard. Daniel looked up at Sophia Morgan, at this stranger offering him salvation wrapped in conditions, and thought of Emma asking him if miracles were real. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. Sophia stood, extending her hand. After that, the offer expires. Her handshake was firm and cold, the grip of someone who had learned to keep the world at arm's length. Daniel left the Morgan building with the contract burning a hole in his messenger bag, his mind spinning with impossible choices. By the time he picked Emma up from school, he had already decided. That night, while Emma slept, he called the number on Sophia's business card. I'll do it, he said when she answered. But I have conditions. Name them. Emma can never know this isn't real. As far as she's concerned, this is a normal relationship. I won't let her get attached to someone who's planning to leave. There was a long pause on the other end. Then quietly, agreed. And if at any point this hurts her, emotionally or otherwise, the deal is off. I don't care about the money. Understood. One more thing. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. Don't make me regret this. Sophia's laugh was soft and brittle. Too late, Mr. Carter. We both already do. The line went dead. 3 days later, Daniel Carter stood in a courthouse with Sophia Morgan beside him, signing papers that turned a desperate arrangement into legal reality. The clerk congratulated them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, as if she could sense the absence of love in the room. Emma, oblivious and excited, held a bouquet of flowers Sophia had brought her. Are you my new mommy? She asked, looking up at Sophia with hope so naked it hurt to witness. Sophia crouched down, and for just a moment, Daniel saw something crack in that perfect facade. I'm your friend, she said gently. Is that okay? Emma nodded, satisfied, and threw her arms around Sophia's neck. And Daniel, watching his daughter embrace a stranger they were both lying to, wondered which of them would break first. The Morgan estate was not a house. It was a statement. Daniel stood in the circular driveway, Emma's hand tucked into his, and stared up at the colonial mansion that would be their home for the next 6 months. White columns, manicured gardens, windows that gleamed like accusations. Behind him, the moving truck idled, containing everything they owned in 12 cardboard boxes. It looks like a castle, Emma whispered, her eyes wide. It's just a house, sweetheart. No. She pulled her hand free and ran toward the front steps, where Sophia stood waiting in tailored slacks and a cream blouse. It's a palace. Are you a princess? Sophia's smile was cautious, unpracticed. Not exactly, but you live in a palace. I suppose I do. Emma tilted her head, studying Sophia with the brutal honesty only 7-year-olds possessed. You're really pretty, like the princess in my book, except she has blonde hair and you have dark hair. But that's okay because dark hair is prettier anyway. Emma? Daniel warned gently, reaching them. Inside voice. But Sophia was laughing, a real sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. Thank you, Emma. You're pretty beautiful yourself. Emma beamed. Then, without warning, she grabbed Sophia's hand. Can you show me my room? Daddy said I get my own room. I've never had my own room before. We shared an apartment and my bed was in the living room, but Daddy put up a curtain so I had privacy. He's really good at making things nice even when they're small. She was talking too fast, the way she always did when she was nervous and excited at the same time. Daniel moved to intervene, to give Sophia an escape route from his daughter's enthusiasm, but Sophia was already kneeling down to Emma's level. I'd love to show you your room, she said softly. I had it painted yellow. Is that okay? If you don't like it, we can change it. Yellow is my favorite color. Mine too. Emma's face split into a grin so wide it hurt to look at. We're going to be best friends. I can tell. Daniel watched them walk into the house together. Emma chattering about her stuffed rabbit and her favorite bedtime stories. Sophia listening with an attention that seemed almost hungry, and he felt the first whisper of unease curl around his spine. This was supposed to be temporary. A transaction, but the way Emma's hand fit into Sophia's, the way Sophia's shoulders had relaxed the moment his daughter smiled at her, it looked dangerously close to real. The first week was an exercise in careful choreography. Sophia had drawn clear boundaries, separate bedrooms, minimal physical contact in private. In public, they played their parts, the whirlwind romance between a self-made CEO and a humble architect. The press ate it up. Photographers caught them at gallery openings, charity dinners, carefully staged coffee dates where Sophia would laugh at something Daniel said and touch his arm just long enough for the cameras to capture it. But at home, they were strangers sharing space. Daniel would wake at 6 to make Emma breakfast. Sophia would emerge at 7, already dressed for the office, and drink her coffee standing up while reviewing emails on her phone. They would exchange polite good mornings. Sophia would ask Emma about school. Daniel would thank her for letting them stay, and then Sophia would leave, and Daniel would be alone in a house too big for ghosts. Except he wasn't alone, because Emma had decided that Sophia Morgan was the most fascinating person she had ever met. Did you know Sophia speaks 3 languages? Emma announced one night at dinner, pushing peas around her plate. She taught me how to say hello in French. Bonjour. That means good day, but you can say it any time. Daniel glanced at Sophia, who was carefully cutting her chicken into precise squares. That's impressive, sweetheart. And she showed me pictures of all the countries she's been to. She's been to Paris and Tokyo and somewhere called Prague, which sounds like a dragon's name, but it's actually a city. Prague, Sophia corrected gently, a smile playing at her lips. In the Czech Republic. Will you take me there someday? The question landed like a stone in still water. Sophia's knife paused mid-cut. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Emma, he started, but Sophia cut him off. Maybe, she said, meeting Emma's hopeful gaze. If your dad says it's okay. It was the wrong answer. The dangerous answer. But Emma lit up like Christmas morning and Daniel couldn't bring himself to correct it. After Emma went to bed, he found Sophia in the library, curled into a leather armchair with a book she wasn't reading. You can't make promises you won't keep, he said quietly. Sophia looked up. I didn't promise. I said maybe. To a 7-year-old, maybe means yes. Then I'll take her to Prague. Her voice was sharp. It's not that complicated. It is when this ends in 5 months and you disappear from her life. Sophia closed the book with more force than necessary. I'm aware of the timeline, Mr. Carter. Then stop acting like you're not. Stop acting like I'm the villain for being kind to your daughter. The words hung between them, jagged and true. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion pressing down on his shoulders. I'm not trying to fight with you. Then what are you trying to do? Protect her. From me? From this. from getting attached to something that isn't real. Sophia stood, and in the lamplight she looked smaller than she had in her office, fragile in a way that money couldn't hide. What if I told you I'm trying to protect myself too? From what? From wanting this to be real. The confession was so quiet he almost missed it, but it hit him like a punch, stealing the breath from his lungs, because he understood. God help him, he understood exactly what she meant. The shift happened slowly, then all at once. It started with small things. Sophia began coming home earlier in time for dinner. She would ask Emma about her day, really ask, and listen to the rambling answers with a patience Daniel hadn't known she possessed. She learned that Emma hated broccoli but loved carrots, that her favorite subject was art, that she was terrified of thunderstorms because they reminded her of the night her mother died. And Sophia, who had built her life around emotional distance, began to dismantle it piece by piece for a little girl who thought she was a princess. One night, Daniel found them in Emma's room, sprawled on the floor with markers and construction paper scattered everywhere. "We're making a family tree for school," Emma explained, tongue poking out in concentration as she drew a wonky branch. "Sophia's helping." Daniel's eyes found Sophia's. She was holding a purple marker, her expression unreadable. On the paper, Emma had drawn 3 stick figures. Daddy, Emma, Sophia. "Where's Mommy?" he asked, his voice rough. Emma pointed to a star she had drawn at the top of the page. "She's watching from heaven. Teacher said that's okay. People who die can still be part of the tree. They just go at the top." Daniel knelt down, throat tight. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Sophia told me about her mommy too. Her mommy is really sick, but she's not dead. Sophia visits her every Sunday." He looked at Sophia again, saw the vulnerability she was trying to hide. "I didn't know that." "You didn't ask," Sophia said simply. After Emma fell asleep, they sat in the hallway outside her room, backs against the wall, exhausted and raw. "My mother has early onset Alzheimer's," Sophia said into the quiet. "She doesn't remember me most days, but I sit with her anyway. I tell her stories about my week. She smiles and nods like I'm a friendly stranger." She paused. "Emma asked me if it made me sad. I told her yes, and she hugged me and said that was okay because being sad means you love someone very much." Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. "She's wise like that. She's special." "I know. I don't want to hurt her, Daniel." It was the first time she had used his first name. "But I don't know how not to." "Neither do I." They sat in silence, 2 people who had made a deal with the devil and were only now realizing the price. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Emma collapsed. It happened at school. One moment she was playing on the swings, the next she was on the ground, her lips turning blue, her small body convulsing. By the time Daniel got the call and raced to the hospital, Sophia was already there. She was in the hallway outside the ICU, still in her work clothes, mascara smudged from crying. When she saw him, she stood, and he watched her try to compose herself, try to rebuild the walls he had seen her building his entire life, but she couldn't. Not this time. "She's stable," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "They gave her oxygen and she's breathing on her own now. The cardiologist wants to run tests." Daniel felt his knees buckle. Sophia caught him, her arms stronger than they looked, and held him while he broke. "She's all I have," he choked out. "I know. If she dies, she won't. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Sophia pulled back, gripping his shoulders, her eyes fierce. "Because I've been exactly where she is, Daniel. I've had my chest cracked open, my heart replaced, my body rebuilt from the inside out. And I survived. She will too." He stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Sophia's hands dropped. She stepped back, and for a moment, he thought she would run. But instead, she unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of her blouse and pulled the fabric aside. The scar was massive, a thick vertical line bisecting her sternum, disappearing beneath the edge of her bra. It was old but angry, the kind of wound that never really healed. 4 years ago, she said quietly. Viral cardiomyopathy. My heart started failing. I was 28. I spent 6 months on the transplant list. They told me I had a 15% chance of getting a match in time. She touched the scar with her fingertips, reverent and bitter. Obviously, I beat the odds. Daniel couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because he was staring at the exact scar his wife had carried. The same curve, the same placement, The same evidence of a life saved and a body forever changed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Because people look at you differently when they know you're broken." Her voice cracked. "They treat you like you're fragile, like you're dying even when you're not. I built an empire, Daniel. I run a company. I make decisions that affect thousands of lives. And I did it all while hiding this, because the moment people know, you stop being powerful. You start being pitied. I don't pity you, don't you?" "No." He moved closer, his hand hovering over her scar, not quite touching. "I'm terrified of you." She laughed, brittle and broken. "Why?" "Because you're exactly what Emma needs, and I have no idea how to let you go." The confession hung in the air between them, dangerous and true. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Then don't." And Daniel, standing in a hospital hallway with a woman who was supposed to be temporary, did the one thing he had sworn he wouldn't do. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and terrified. Grief and hope tangled together. Two people clinging to each other because the alternative was drowning. Sophia's hands fisted in his shirt, his fingers threaded through her hair. And for one perfect, impossible moment, the world narrowed to just this. Her mouth on his, her scar pressed against his chest, their hearts beating in sync. When they finally broke apart, Sophia was crying. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "I know. We had a deal. I know. Daniel, I know." He rested his forehead against hers, breathing her in. "But I don't care anymore." Behind them, a doctor cleared her throat. They sprang apart, guilty and raw. The doctor pretended not to notice. "Mr. Carter, your daughter is asking for you." Daniel and Sophia walked into Emma's room together, hand in hand, no longer pretending. Emma was tiny in the hospital bed, monitors beeping softly around her. But when she saw them, she smiled. "You came together." "Of course we did," Sophia said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Are you going to stay?" Emma's voice was small, scared in a way that children shouldn't have to be scared. Sophia looked at Daniel. He nodded. "Yes," Sophia said, taking Emma's hand. "I'm going to stay." And in that moment, Daniel knew they had crossed a line they could never uncross. The contract meant nothing now. The money, the timeline, the careful boundaries, all of it had been incinerated the moment Sophia showed him her scar. They weren't pretending anymore. And that, Daniel realized with a sick twist in his gut, was going to destroy them all. The storm didn't announce itself. It arrived in the form of Richard Morgan standing in Sophia's office on a Tuesday morning, a manila folder in his hand and murder in his eyes. Daniel was there, sitting across from Sophia as they reviewed the portfolio of a new project, when the door slammed open. He had met Sophia's father exactly twice, once at a staged family dinner, where Richard had looked at him like something tracked in on expensive shoes, and once at a charity gala where the older man had simply pretended he didn't exist. Now, Richard's presence filled the room like poison gas. "Out," Richard said, pointing at Daniel without looking at him. Sophia stood. "Dad, you can't just—" "I said out." Richard's voice was ice. "Unless you want him to hear exactly what kind of con artist he's married to." Daniel's stomach dropped. Sophia's face went pale, but she lifted her chin, defiant. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my husband." Richard laughed, cruel and sharp. "Husband, is that what we're calling him?" He threw the folder onto Sophia's desk, papers scattered across the polished surface. 6 months. $500,000. A contract signed and notarized with witnesses who will testify in court if necessary. The world tilted. Daniel stared at the documents. His signature. Sophia's signature. Every clause they had agreed to. Every stipulation that made their marriage a transaction instead of a vow. "You hired someone to follow me," Sophia said, her voice deadly quiet. "I hired someone to protect you." Richard finally looked at Daniel, his contempt so thick it was almost tangible. From men like him, gold diggers, opportunists, parasites who prey on desperate women with more money than sense. "That's not what this is," Daniel said, finding his voice. "No? Then explain to me why my daughter is paying you $500,000 to play house." "Dad, stop. Explain to me why a man with a dying daughter and a mountain of debt just happened to catch the eye of a billionaire heiress at a charity gala." The words were surgical, designed to cut, and they worked. Daniel felt them slice through every moment of the last 2 months, poisoning every dinner with Emma, every kiss with Sophia, every time he had let himself believe this could be real. You don't understand, Sophia said. I understand perfectly. Richard picked up the contract, waving it like evidence. You wanted to circumvent your grandfather's will. You needed a husband to take control of the company, so you bought one. The same way you buy everything else. It's not like that anymore. Then what is it like, Sophia? Because from where I'm standing, you've just handed this man the keys to our entire fortune based on what? 2 months of playing house? Did you think he wouldn't take you for everything once he realized how desperate you are? Daniel's hands clenched into fists. I never asked for anything beyond what we agreed. Oh well, how noble. Richard's smile was vicious. Tell me, Mr. Carter, when were you planning to end this little charade? When the money cleared? When you had bled her dry? Or were you hoping to extend the contract, maybe negotiate for more? That's enough, Sophia said, her voice shaking with rage. But Richard wasn't finished. He turned to his daughter, and something shifted in his expression. The cruelty melted into something worse. Pity. Do you have any idea what this stress is doing to you? Dr. Patel called me last week. Your blood pressure is elevated. You're not sleeping. You missed your last 2 cardiology appointments. Sophia went very still. He had no right. He had every right. You're a transplant patient, Sophia. Your body is a ticking time bomb held together by medication and luck. And you're jeopardizing all of it for a man who is using you. You don't know him. I know men like him, and I know you. Richard's voice softened, dangerous in its gentleness. You're lonely. You've been lonely since the transplant. Since Marcus left you when he found out you were sick. Since every man you've dated has looked at your scar and flinched. And this one? He gestured dismissively at Daniel. This one saw an opportunity. A vulnerable woman with unlimited resources and a desperate need to be loved. He's not an idiot. He's just a predator. Stop, Sophia whispered. I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to control me. Because you clearly can't do it yourself. Richard's composure finally cracked. You could die, Sophia. Do you understand that? The transplant bought you time, not immortality. Every day is a risk. Every stress, every spike in blood pressure, every missed medication is one step closer to rejection. And you're gambling it all on a stranger who signed a contract to pretend to love you. The words landed like bullets. Sophia's face crumpled, not in anger, in devastation. Because he had found the wound and pressed until it bled. Daniel moved without thinking, stepping between them. Get out. Richard raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I said get out. You've made your point. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. Daniel's voice was low and dangerous. You want to call me a gold digger? Fine, you want to say I'm using her. I can't stop you, but you don't get to stand here and tell her she's too broken to be loved. Something flickered in Richard's expression. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. She is broken, he said quietly. Her heart is failing, slowly, but inevitably. And the moment you realize that saving her is more trouble than she's worth, you'll leave. Just like Marcus did. Just like every man who's ever seen what's under that scar. Daniel felt the words wrap around his throat like a noose. Because Richard Morgan, for all his cruelty, was telling the truth. Daniel had watched someone he loved die from a failing heart. He had held Sarah's hand while her transplanted heart gave out. Had watched the light leave her eyes. Had buried her knowing that all the medicine and miracles in the world hadn't been enough. And now he was watching it happen again. Daniel. Sophia's voice was small, pleading. Don't listen to him. But he couldn't stop. Because Richard had pulled back the curtain and shown him the future. Sophia, declining. Hospital beds. Medications that stopped working. A little girl who had already lost one mother watching another one disappear. Mr. Carter. Richard's voice was almost gentle now. I'm offering you a way out. Walk away now. I'll honor the original contract. You'll get your money. Your daughter will get her surgery. And Sophia will be spared the inevitable heartbreak when you realize you can't do this. Dad, stop. I'm trying to save you both. Daniel looked at Sophia, really looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, the hope, the desperate belief that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who wouldn't run. And he thought of Sarah, pale and dying, begging him to move on, to find happiness, and to not let her death destroy him. But it had destroyed him. He had spent 2 years trying to rebuild himself for Emma's sake, trying to be whole when he was nothing but fragments. And then Sophia had walked into his life, with her impossible offer and her hidden scars, and he had let himself believe he could be healed by someone who was just as broken. Daniel. Sophia stepped toward him, her hand reaching for his. Tell him he's wrong. He should have. God, he should have taken her hand and told Richard Morgan to go to hell. Should have fought for her the way she had fought for Emma. Should have been brave enough to risk losing someone again. Instead, he said the words that would haunt him forever. He's not wrong. Sophia froze. What? This was a mistake. Daniel's voice cracked. We were supposed to keep this professional. We weren't supposed to. He couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words that would make it real. Supposed to what? Tears were streaming down Sophia's face now. Fall in love? You're sick, Sophia. I'm surviving. Your father is right. The stress, the risk. Emma can't lose another mother. I can't. His throat closed. I can't watch you die. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sophia stared at him like he had struck her. So that's it? You're walking away because I'm not guaranteed to live forever. I'm walking away because I have to protect my daughter. By breaking her heart? Sophia's voice rose, sharp with betrayal. She loves you. She loves me. We're a family, Daniel. Or did you forget that part of the deal? The deal was the problem. The words exploded out of him. This was never supposed to be real. You paid me to play a part and I was stupid enough to forget that. You're lying. Sophia moved closer, desperate. I felt it. When you kissed me at the hospital. When you held me. When you told Emma we were going to be okay. You weren't acting. Maybe I was. No. She shook her head violently. You loved me. I know you did. I loved my wife, Daniel said, the cruelty in his voice a shield against his own breaking heart. You're just someone who reminded me of her. The blow landed exactly as he intended. Sophia stumbled back like he had physically pushed her. Richard moved to his daughter's side, his hand on her shoulder. Protective now. Victorious. I think we're done here, Mr. Carter. I'll have my lawyers draw up the termination papers. You'll have your money by the end of the week. Daniel turned and walked toward the door. Each step felt like drowning. Wait. He stopped. Couldn't help himself. Sophia's voice was wrecked but steady. At least have the courage to look at me when you destroy us. He turned. She was standing in the middle of her office, small and shattered, her hand pressed against her chest like she was holding her heart together through sheer will. I need you to know something. Before you leave. Before you take your money and disappear. Sophia, don't. I loved you. The words were a knife. Not because you reminded me of someone. Not because I was lonely or desperate. I loved you because when you looked at my scar, you didn't flinch. You didn't pity me. You saw me as human. As whole. She wiped her eyes roughly. And I will never forgive you for making me believe that was enough. Daniel felt something shatter in his chest. But he had already committed to this. Already chosen fear over faith. I'm sorry. No, you're not. Sophia's smile was broken. But you will be. He left before he could change his mind. The next 3 weeks were a slow descent into hell. Daniel moved back into his old apartment with Emma. The money appeared in his account exactly as promised. $350,000 for Emma's surgery. $150,000 for the debt, and a future he no longer wanted. Emma cried for 5 days straight. Why did Sophia leave? She would ask, her voice small and confused. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart. It wasn't you. Then why? Because I'm a coward. Because I loved her too much to watch her die. Because I thought protecting you meant breaking both our hearts. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, he would say instead. But Emma was 7, not stupid. You made her go away. I know you did. She wasn't wrong. At school, she stopped turning in homework, stopped smiling. Her teacher called to say Emma had drawn a picture in art class. A family with one person scribbled out in black marker so violently the paper had torn. Is everything okay at home? The teacher asked gently. No, nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. The surgery was scheduled. Emma would get her new heart valve, she would live. And Daniel told himself that was enough. That her survival was worth his devastation. Worth Sophia's heartbreak. Worth the look in Emma's eyes that said she would never trust him again. But late at night, alone in his room, he would pull up Sophia's social media. She had stopped posting. The company issued a statement that she was taking a leave of absence for health reasons. Her mother's Alzheimer's facility confirmed she hadn't visited in 2 weeks. and Daniel, staring at the darkness, wondered if he had saved Emma's life only to destroy someone else's. The call came on a Friday. It was Grace Chen, Sophia's assistant. Her voice was tight with something Daniel couldn't identify. Panic, anger, desperation. "You need to come to the hospital," she said without preamble. Daniel's blood turned to ice. "What happened?" "She collapsed yesterday, rejection episode. Her body is attacking the transplant. They're running tests, but—" Grace's voice broke. "Her parents are here. They're talking about palliative care options." The phone slipped from Daniel's hand. Emma found him sitting on the kitchen floor 10 minutes later, staring at nothing. "Daddy." She crouched beside him. "What's wrong?" He looked at his daughter. 7 years old, wise beyond her years. The only good thing he had ever done. "I made a terrible mistake," he whispered. Emma took his hand. "Then fix it." "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can." Her voice was fierce. "You told me that love means being brave. You told me that when Mommy died. That loving people is scary because we might lose them, but we love them anyway because that's what makes us human." Daniel felt tears burn behind his eyes. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just stopped listening." She squeezed his hand. "Sophia is dying, isn't she?" "There was no point in lying." "Maybe. Then we have to go to her right now before it's too late." "Emma." "Daddy." She pulled him to his feet with surprising strength. "I already lost one mom. I'm not losing another one because you're too scared. Now get your keys." Daniel stared at his 7-year-old daughter, this tiny, fierce thing who had somehow remained brave when he had crumbled. And for the first time in 3 weeks, he made the right choice. "Okay," he said. "Let's go get her." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and despair. Daniel held Emma's hand as they navigated the corridors, following the room number Grace had given him. His heart was a drum in his chest, erratic and terrified. Every step felt like walking toward judgment. What if she didn't want to see him? What if he was too late? What if the damage he had done was irreparable? Emma squeezed his hand. "It's going to be okay, Daddy." He wished he had her faith. They found the room on the 4th floor, cardiac ICU. Through the window, Daniel could see figures moving inside. Richard Morgan stood with his back to the door, his shoulders rigid. Evelyn, Sophia's mother, sat in a chair by the bed, her face buried in her hands. And there, small and pale against white sheets, was Sophia. She looked like a ghost. Tubes ran from her arms. Monitors beeped softly. Her dark hair was limp against the pillow, her skin almost translucent. But her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling with the hollow expression of someone who had stopped fighting. Daniel felt his knees buckle. Emma didn't hesitate. She pushed open the door and walked straight into the room, dragging Daniel with her. "Sophia!" Every head turned. Richard's face went dark with fury. Evelyn looked up, confused. But Sophia turned her head slowly, and when she saw Emma, something flickered in her eyes. A spark. Small and fragile, but there. "Emma?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Emma let go of Daniel's hand and ran to the bed, carefully avoiding the wires and tubes. "I came to see you. Daddy said you were sick and I told him we had to come right now because you're my family, and family doesn't leave each other." Tears slipped down Sophia's face. "Baby, you shouldn't be here." "Yes, I should, because you're sad, and when people are sad, they need hugs." Emma climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed and wrapped her small arms around Sophia's shoulders. "See? Hugs make everything better." Sophia's arms came up slowly, trembling, and held Emma like she was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. Her sobs were quiet but wrecking, her whole body shaking. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, watching his daughter do what he had been too cowardly to do. Love without conditions, without fear, without calculating the cost. Richard moved toward him, his face a mask of cold rage. "You have 5 seconds to leave before I call security." "No." The word came from Sophia, weak but firm. "Let him stay." "Sophia, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." She pulled back from Emma, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. "And I want to hear what he has to say." Richard looked like he wanted to argue, but Evelyn stood and placed a hand on his arm. "Richard, let her decide." Father and daughter stared at each other for a long moment. Then Richard stepped aside, his expression promising violence if Daniel said the wrong thing. Daniel moved to the bed slowly, like approaching something wild and wounded. Emma scooted over to make room, her small hand finding Sophia's and holding tight. "Hi," he said stupidly. Sophia's laugh was brittle. "Hi. I heard you were sick. Dying, actually. My body decided it doesn't want this heart anymore." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. "Funny, right? I survived the transplant. Survived 4 years of complications. And now I'm dying because I let myself feel something. That's not..." The doctor said stress was a factor. Elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, missed medications. She met his eyes, and the pain there was bottomless. Turns out heartbreak is bad for people with bad hearts. Who knew? The guilt was a physical weight crushing his chest. "Sophia, I'm so sorry." "For what? For leaving? For telling me I was just a replacement for your dead wife?" Her voice cracked. "For making me believe I could be loved when I'm nothing but borrowed time?" I was wrong. The words came out raw and desperate. About all of it. I was terrified and stupid, and I convinced myself that walking away was protecting Emma, protecting myself. But all I did was destroy the best thing that ever happened to us. "Daddy made a mistake," Emma said solemnly. "A really big one. But he wants to fix it." Sophia looked at Emma, then at Daniel. "Some things can't be fixed." "I know." Daniel knelt beside the bed, bringing himself eye level with her. "I know I broke your trust. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I need you to know that every word I said in your father's office was a lie. I wasn't acting. I wasn't pretending. I fell in love with you, Sophia. Real, terrifying, all-consuming love. And it scared me so much that I ran." "Why?" The question was barely audible. "Because I watched Sarah die." His voice broke. "I watched her transplanted heart fail. Watched the doctors try everything. Watched her slip away piece by piece until there was nothing left but pain. And when I looked at you, all I could see was that future. I couldn't survive it again. Couldn't watch Emma survive it again." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "So you chose to break us now instead of risking it later?" "Yes, and I was wrong." Daniel reached for her hand, half expecting her to pull away. But she didn't. Her fingers were cold and fragile in his. "Because the time we had was worth the risk. Every dinner, every laugh, every moment Emma smiled because you were there. It was all worth it. And if I die anyway?" Sophia's voice was small. "If my body rejects this heart and I leave you just like Sarah did?" Daniel squeezed her hand. "Then I'll be grateful for every second I got to love you. Because loving you, even for a short time, is better than spending the rest of my life safe and alone." Emma nodded vigorously. "That's what I told him. Love is supposed to be scary. That's how you know it's real." Sophia laughed through her tears, looking at Emma with so much love it hurt to witness. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. Grown-ups just don't listen." A sound came from behind them. Daniel turned to find Evelyn Morgan crying quietly, her hand pressed to her mouth. Richard stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "You really love her," Richard said. It wasn't a question. More than anything, even knowing she might not survive, especially knowing that. Daniel stood, facing Richard squarely. "You were right about me. I am desperate. I am broke. I did sign a contract to marry your daughter for money, but you were wrong about why I'm here now. I'm not here for the company. I'm not here for her fortune. I'm here because a 7-year-old girl taught me that real love means showing up even when you're terrified." Richard studied him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, his expression softened. "Evelyn," he said quietly. "Tell him." Evelyn wiped her eyes and moved closer to the bed. Sophia's doctors found a match, a new heart. It became available 2 days ago. Daniel's world stopped. "What?" "The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning if she agrees to it." Evelyn looked at her daughter, but she refused. She said she was too tired to fight anymore. Sophia turned her face away. "What's the point? Even if I survive the surgery, I'm still dying, just slower." "No." Emma's voice was fierce. "You're living. There's a difference." "Emma, my mommy died and I was really sad. But you know what she told me before she went to heaven?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "She said that every day we get to love people is a gift. Even if it's only 1 day or 1 week or 1 year. We don't get to choose how long. We only get to choose if we're brave enough to love them anyway." Sophia sobbed, pulling Emma close. "I'm so scared." "I know, but Daddy and I will be with you." the whole time. We'll hold your hand and we won't let go. Promise, Mia, promise. Emma looked at Daniel. Right, Daddy. Daniel moved to the other side of the bed, taking Sophia's free hand in both of his. I'm not going anywhere, not this time, not ever. Sophia looked between them, her family cobbled together from desperation and hope, and something shifted in her expression. The hollow emptiness faded, replaced by something tentative, but real. Hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do the surgery. Evelyn exhaled in relief. Richard nodded, his jaw tight with emotion he wouldn't voice. But it was Emma who sealed it, pressing a kiss to Sophia's forehead with the solemnity of a blessing. Good, because we have plans. We're going to Prague, remember? And Paris. And I want to learn French for real, not just bonjour. And you promised to help me with my family tree project, and I added you in purple marker, because that's your favorite color. Sophia laughed, broken and beautiful. We're really doing this? Daniel leaned down and kissed her forehead. We're really doing this. The surgery took 14 hours. Daniel and Emma waited in a room that smelled like stale coffee and fear. Emma eventually fell asleep curled against his side, her hand clutching the stuffed rabbit she had brought from home. Richard and Evelyn waited across the room, silent and united in their terror. At hour 12, Richard spoke. If she survives this, if she makes it through, you'll take care of her? Yes. Even when it's hard? Even when she's difficult and stubborn and pushes you away because she's scared? Daniel met the older man's eyes. Especially then. Richard nodded slowly. Then I was wrong about you. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air, unexpected and real. At hour 14, the surgeon emerged. She was smiling. The transplant was successful. The new heart is beating strong. She's stable. Daniel felt the world tilt back into place. 3 days later, Sophia woke up. She was groggy and disoriented, her speech slurred from medication. But when she saw Daniel sitting beside her bed, Emma asleep in the chair with her rabbit, she smiled. You stayed, she whispered. I told you I would. I thought I dreamed it. No dream. I'm here. We're both here. And we're not leaving. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired of fighting. Then let us fight for you. Daniel took her hand, careful of the IV. You've been surviving alone for too long. Let us help you live. She looked at Emma, small and peaceful in sleep. She really said love is supposed to be scary? She did. Smart kid. The smartest. Sophia turned back to him, and in her eyes was everything they had lost and found again. Daniel Carter, will you marry me? For real this time? He laughed, surprised. I thought we were already married. That was a contract. This is a choice. Then yes, 1,000 times, yes. She squeezed his hand weakly. Even knowing I come with a high-maintenance heart and abandonment issues. Even knowing that. And medical debt? I've got experience with that. And in-laws who hate you. I think your dad is warming up to me. Sophia smiled. He told me this morning that you're almost tolerable. High praise. The highest. She yawned, exhaustion pulling at her. Stay with me? Always. As she drifted back to sleep, Emma stirred and climbed onto the bed carefully, nestling between them. Sophia's arm came around the little girl automatically, protective even in semi-consciousness. And Daniel, looking at his family, broken and stitched together and fighting every day to survive, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. 6 months later, they stood in a courthouse again. But this time, the room was full. Emma, wearing a yellow dress and holding a bouquet of daisies. Richard and Evelyn holding hands and trying not to cry. Grace Chen with a camera. A handful of friends who had watched them burn down and rebuild. And Sophia, in a simple white dress, with a scar on her chest and hope in her eyes. The judge smiled at them. Do you, Daniel Carter, take Sophia Morgan to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live? Daniel looked at Sophia, at this woman who had saved his life by letting him save hers, and said the truest words he had ever spoken. I do. And do you, Sophia Morgan, take Daniel Carter to be your lawfully wedded husband? Sophia's smile was radiant. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Daniel cupped Sophia's face in his hands and kissed her softly, reverently, the way you kiss someone you almost lost. When they pulled apart, Emma cheered. Now we're a real family. Sophia laughed and pulled Emma into their embrace. We've been a real family for a long time, sweetheart. I know, but now it's official. They left the courthouse together, hand in hand, and walked into a future that came with no guarantees. Sophia's new heart could fail. Emma might need another surgery. Life was fragile and uncertain and terrifying, but they were facing it together. And that, Daniel thought as he watched his wife and daughter laugh at something he missed, was the only miracle that mattered. 2 years later, Daniel stood in the kitchen of their home, not the Morgan mansion, but a smaller house they had chosen together, and watched through the window as Sophia taught Emma how to plant tomatoes in the garden. Sophia moved carefully, still mindful of her limitations, but she was strong, healthy. The new heart had taken. Against every odd, against every fear, she had survived. Emma said something that made Sophia laugh, bright and unguarded, and she scooped the girl up in a hug that left them both covered in dirt. Daniel felt arms wrap around him from behind. Evelyn, visiting for the weekend, rested her chin on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For giving me my daughter back. She was lost for so long, and you found her." "She found me first," Daniel corrected. "Maybe you found each other." Through the window, Sophia looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, radiant and alive, and mouthed 3 words. "I love you." Daniel pressed his hand to the glass, mouthing back, "I love you more." Emma, oblivious, continued digging in the garden, chattering about the vegetables they would harvest in the fall, about the school play she was starring in, about the vacation to Prague they had finally booked. She was talking about the future, not with fear, but with certainty. And Daniel, who had spent so many years afraid to hope, finally let himself believe in it. They had survived. They were surviving. And tomorrow, they would do it all over again. Together.